Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Paul Jay. The Greek people, 61% of those who voted in the referendum on Sunday, said no to the austerity package that had been proposed by the European Troika, as it's called. That's the European Commission, the European Central Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. Well, they said no to that package, but it's not entirely clear what the Greek people are willing to say yes to. Now, joining us to help us answer that question is Costas Lapavitsas. He's a professor of economics at the University of London School of Oriental and African Studies. He was elected at the top of the list as a Syriza MP in January, and he recently co-authored the book Against the Troika with Heiner Flassbeck. He now joins us from his constituency in Greek Macedonia. Thanks very much for joining us, Costas.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Paul.
So before we get into what's next, let's just talk about the moment. Even just a little bit from a personal angle, I know you've been in the midst of this struggle for many years, long before you were elected as an MP. You've been critical to some extent of Syriza's negotiations and how things have been proceeding. What did that moment mean for you?
Oh, there's no question this is a historic moment. No question at all. It's a historic moment for Greece, and it's a historic moment for Europe. This is a moment when all these tensions and problems and the nonsense that has characterized Europe the last few years, they're all coming to a head. And there's going to be a resolution, not in the next few days, but certainly in the next few weeks. So it's a historic moment for sure. We're going to know which way the European monetary union is going to go and which way the European Union is going to go.
Now, in terms of the results of the vote, it's clear that the will of the Greek people was against that austerity package, against an enormous pressure through the media and threats that it was going to lead to disaster if people voted no. I know there were television commercials and pundits on television talking about the total collapse of the Greek economy and how much all of a sudden they were so worried about ordinary working people. The same people that couldn't give a damn about wages and pensions are all of a sudden so worried about it. But the Greek people were not intimidated.
I have to say that this is one of those moments when it does feel good to be Greek. It does feel, one can feel proud because the last few years and the last few months have been years of very great difficulty. No one likes to be begging others for money, if you see what I mean. No one likes to feel that his country and his people are at such dire straits that they're at the mercy of others. This week has been an extraordinary week. The pressures internally and the pressures internationally have been, I've never seen the like. I mean, the only thing that Greeks were not threatened with was a mass outbreak of syphilis from the skies if they voted no, right? And they said no. They said no. They basically stood their ground and said no, we're not going to have it. We're not going to accept the old ways. We want something different. We might not be entirely clear what it is, but we're perfectly clear that if we go the way of the lenders, that's no future at all. And the most dramatic thing was that actually this was said by the youth. What made the big difference this time is that the youth has said no. That's the first time they've spoken since the beginning of the crisis, and they said no.
Now, Monday morning, Finance Minister Varoufakis resigned. Did that surprise you? What significance does it have?
Yanis Varoufakis has had a mixed record during these 5.5 months. I've known Yanis for a long time. I've got respect for him. I've had my criticisms about his performance as a finance minister. I might not have agreed with everything he's done and the way he's gone about his business. But I cannot take back from him the fact that he tried to put across a radical line that has some content. Now, he came under enormous pressure, an incredible attack about a month and a half ago. He was slammed by the European powers and he had to retreat. During the last week or so, he's managed to salvage a lot of personal pride and a lot of personal standing. He did a very good job arguing for the no vote. But that really was the end for him, because it was obvious that he couldn't go to Brussels and negotiate. He just didn't have any scope to do so. So he stepped down, and now it's a question of who's going to replace him. I'm a little worried about who that might be. I don't want someone to stand in his shoes who hasn't got some of the radical outlook of Yanis. So I'm a bit concerned.
Yeah, because in his resignation little statement that he wrote on his blog, I guess maybe he's gone more public with it, but he kind of positioned it in a nuanced way that the Europeans don't want him. They want him absent from the discussions. And it's kind of a concession, it seemed, to remove him from those negotiations.
I'm not sure it's a concession. I think it's a realistic move. I think relations between Varoufakis and the lenders have become so tense that it would have been impossible for him to negotiate with any seriousness. That's the reality of it. So I can understand. It's basically practical politics. It's basically practical politics.
Now, you're a member of Parliament. You've been writing columns in The Guardian. What are you advocating now? In this moment, what should Syriza's next steps be?
Let's be clear about a number of things. The strategy of Syriza before the election, and for most of the time in government, has been to achieve radical change in Greece and a new relationship with the lenders, solving the macroeconomic problems of the country within the Eurozone. The argument was, if we negotiate hard, if we use the democratic weapons that we've got in our hands, we will achieve a better settlement for the Greek people. This strategy has come to an end. I don't think the lenders will take a step back. I think their attitude will be very harsh. Syriza needs a new strategy very quickly, and I think the realization will come upon it equally quickly in the coming days and weeks. It's a dead end. I don't think the European Central Bank will provide the country with more liquidity. I don't think the lenders will make a better offer. Syriza will have to face a tough reality in the coming period, and that means making do, relying on the strength of the Greek people, and only that, to seek out of the crisis.
I heard on BBC last night a member of Merkel's party, a right-wing member of Merkel's party, I mean the whole party is pretty right-wing, but at any rate a right-wing of a right-wing party, he says it's time for the Greeks to take their lesson.
The Greeks have shown, they showed yesterday, that they are ready to face up to whatever will come their way from the lenders. The lenders must not forget that. Yesterday it was shown very clearly, the Greek people are ready for it. So that's the first thing to say. Beyond that, there is no liquidity in the country. The economy hardly functions. Syriza can make an attempt to get a better deal with the lenders. If that doesn't come through, Syriza needs to take radical measures quickly. He needs to put the knife in. He needs to sort the problem of the banks out. Banks need to be nationalized and run centrally very quickly. He needs to do something about the mass media. The mass media in this country this week went absolutely crazy trying to push for the yes vote. Syriza needs to do something about big business.
Back up. What is do something about the mass media? What's the something?
The mass media, the private companies that own the mass media in Greece owe the state enormous amounts of money. They've been operating on very favorable terms. It's an incredible regime. It needs to be tightened, and very quickly. It's completely unacceptable that a few oligarchs can run the mass media in this country, wage war against the government, and still owe the state enormous amounts of money. Enough of that. The Greek people don't want anymore.
And is there a public broadcaster of any scale in Greece?
There is a public broadcaster. It's been reopened because the previous government shut it down. That needs to be strengthened, and it needs to be to become, fully operational. So that action is needed. And then action is also needed with regard to big business. This country is run in the interests of a small group of very powerful, very rich, and very corrupt people. The Greek people are up in arms about that. They want action. Syriza has been delinquent in this respect, very slow. We need action quickly. So all these things have to happen in the next few days, or have to start happening in the next few days. And in addition to that, obviously, the country needs to deal in a decisive way with the lenders. Enough is enough. If this means devising new ways of creating liquidity, then we will devise new ways of creating liquidity.
That means back to the drachma.
Not necessarily, not in the first instance. There are ways of doing it. We are just one step from extraordinary economic measures taken in Greece, measures that have been taken in Europe for a long time, but then the situation imposed on Greece is extraordinary.
What kind of measures are you talking about?
Well, there are ways of creating liquidity. There are ways in which the state can pay for its obligations and for its purchases, even in euros, but without going through the banks in the usual way.
How does that work? I thought the country is running out of euros.
Yeah, the country is running out of euros, but the state can issue means of payments in euros.
I mean, actually print its own euros.
No, print IOUs, for instance. I'm not suggesting that this is what's going to happen, but I'm saying that there are options, and the country should use them because blackmail will not work. I argued some time ago in The Guardian, as it happens, which you mentioned previously, that Greece will not be blackmailed. Well, I was right. Greece will not be blackmailed. Those who think that the Greek people will be blackmailed don't understand the Greek people. Enough is enough.
I mean, I know you and I know each other, and I've interviewed you, many times. I mean, it was kind of known this, if one wanted to know, that this is where this all was going to end up, in the sense that to think that the European finance capitalists were going to make a fair deal for Greece. It was hard to understand why anyone would think that, given who they are. There doesn't seem to have been real planning for this moment. Like, you would have thought it would have been even a good negotiating leverage to create all kinds of mechanisms for this moment, and even if that isn't what you were aiming for, at least you'd have them in place.
Paul, this is Greece. Okay, planning and preparation, basically, this is not what the Greeks are known for, whether they belong to the left or to the right. But that's what they are, and that's what it is, and that's how history moves. Those who understand political economy and those who understand the politics of Europe knew that if there was a Syriza government, it could expect the hostility of the lenders, who are very conservative and reactionary, essentially. We knew that. But the Greek people didn't necessarily understand it in the way in which those involved in politics understand it. People have to understand what's happening in their own way. And that's what's happened the last few months. People have understood it in their own way. That also means national identity. The Greeks feel deeply affronted. They feel that they've done everything that was asked of them. They feel that they've bent over backwards to come to a sensible deal with the lenders, and they feel that the lenders have been ruthless, arrogant, overweening, you name it. And people are very, very angry, very annoyed. Enough. That's what they're saying, enough.
Okay, thanks very much for joining us, Costas. We're going to do a second part with Costas, so please have a look for that. And thank you for joining us. Thanks, Costas.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.